ESPN reports that Trae Young is deeply disappointed with the Hawks' latest move, a feeling made obvious by his passive-aggressive tweets, which are a classic Trae move. There's the cryptic hourglass emoji, a trademark signal that something is about to go down. But what's the real story behind all this digital noise? The Hawks just sent Trae a message of their own, a move you almost never see with a franchise player. They offered no max extension. That's right, with Trae potentially becoming a free agent next year, Atlanta is rolling the dice and accepting the risk that their star could walk for nothing. But if history tells us anything, this isn't just about a contract. This could be the first step to a shocking trade to a team you would never expect. And by the end of this, you'll understand why this changes everything for Trae Young.
The disrespect is almost unbelievable when you look at the other contracts flying around the league. Remember how Jimmy Butler was up for a max extension a year after taking the Heat to the finals, only for Pat Riley to say no, he's gonna have to show us more? We all thought it could mean a trade, and a year later, he was on Golden State. Trae is only asking for the same contract De'Aaron Fox just got from the San Antonio Spurs. Fox isn't even their #1 guy. Trae, the face of the franchise in Atlanta, can't get that same commitment. To make things even more dramatic, when a football player demanded a trade, Trae chimed in, tweeting, "This is why you pay the man early. When someone will take less early to stay in a place they wanted to be forever, you do it. Price only goes up now. Get what you deserve, bro." It was a clear public warning to the Hawks. Pay me or else. So why in the world is Atlanta taking this massive gamble?
To understand their side, you have to step into their shoes, which is where things get really complicated. Trae puts up insane offensive numbers, consistently leading the NBA in assists and scoring. But the bottom line is winning. The entire point of all those numbers is to lead your team to a championship. And for 7 years, the answer has been a hard no. Luka just signed a max third contract with the Lakers, no doubt about it, but Trae still feels like he's on that same level. And the truth is, he's not. This is a harsh reality that is now settling in for him, and it's something he cannot accept. For years, people doubted Trae, but in 2022, the haters were finally validated. It was the Hawks versus the Heat in the first round of the playoffs. In one of the pivotal games, Trae struggled big time against the Heat's relentless defense. Every time he drove, a wall of Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler shut him down. You could just feel the frustration building with every turnover and forced shot. That series exposed Trae as a deeply flawed star, one that you simply cannot win with as your #1 guy. Who was the last #1 guy with Trae's build to win it all? Steph Curry? No, he's so much more efficient and a solid defender. Maybe Pistons Isaiah Thomas, but he had a deep defensive team around him, which means you have to go all the way back to 1989. That's the fear the Hawks are wrestling with. So from their perspective, it's smart to not max this guy. But history also says it can lead to a much bigger problem.
Next year, Trae can opt out of his contract and become a free agent, free to go anywhere with cap space. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski says NBA execs are closely watching and monitoring the future and status of Trae Young. So who could that be? Well, there is a realistic but shocking landing spot next offseason. But what the Hawks really want is for Trae to accept less money, like Jalen Brunson. Brunson accepted a team-friendly deal from the Knicks, but if he had waited a year, he could have gotten over $100 million more. A massive discount. With that cap flexibility, New York has been able to build a deeper, more well-rounded team around Brunson, who is kind of like Trae, terrible on defense, but a clutch, big-game scorer. The problem is, Trae doesn't want to take a hometown discount. It would be an admission to himself and the entire NBA that he's not that guy. If Trae did want to take that discount, this deal would already be done. But the real question is, if Atlanta doesn't think he's worth it, does anyone else? Because it doesn't matter if Trae feels disrespected if he can't get that money somewhere else on the open market.
So who's got cap space next year? The rankings are the Wizards with over $70 million. Then the Nets, Lakers, Jazz, Blazers, Hornets, Bulls, and Clippers. But none of the teams that need a point guard there offer Trae a real chance to win. What they do offer him, though, is leverage. Trae can tell the Hawks, "You either pay me what I want, that max contract, or I will leave to the Wizards in free agency," which is exactly why I completely expect leaks from Trae's camp in this next year about how he likes what the Wizards are building, or that he's intrigued by playing in New York for the Nets, which is total BS. He doesn't actually want to play for those teams, but he needs that leverage, that threat,
to get paid by Atlanta. His other move here is to go somewhere in a trade.
Here's a look at which teams might be interested in getting Trae Young. The first team is the Miami Heat, who do not have a natural point guard on their roster. Trae would be an amazing fit next to Bam Adebayo, setting screens and catching lobs. And yes, there's some overlap with Tyler Hero, but you'd expect Hero would have to be in this trade. You can imagine Eric Spoelstra would be the best coach Trae has ever played for, and Trae would bring some of that alpha mentality they've missed since Jimmy Butler left. But you'd expect Miami to want a star like Trae. What about the Minnesota Timberwolves? One position of need there was a true point guard after the aging Mike Conley leaves. The Wolves have a top 10 defense, which Trae desperately needs, and his passing could unlock both Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert at the rim. You know how Ant's been complaining about too many double teams? Hello, Trae Young is the perfect solution, and one of their biggest problems has been their half-court offense, which Trae excels at. Now, obviously, there is some potential friction because Ant also wants the ball a lot, but many's new owners would get to make a big splash trade. But the most shocking landing spot, where no one expects, is the Boston Celtics. And hear me out, because there is a real case for the Celtics to pursue Trae Young after moving on from Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. Boston has relied on an ISO-heavy offense in crunch time and has lacked that elite playmaker for years. When things stall, they really need that pure creator who breaks down defenses and thrives in chaos. And Trae is one of the league's best at generating points out of thin air. Pick-and-roll master, deep shooting gravity, elite lob passing. Trae is such a good fit because the Celtics are a top 4 defense. And I know people would be shocked at such a polarizing player like Trae landing with a franchise like Boston. But isn't it kind of perfect? A straight-laced organization to balance out the flashiness of Trae Young? Of course, none of these teams have a ton to trade, but the fact is that Trae could use that leverage of the cap space from like the Wizards and say, actually, you know what? Trade me to the Celtics or the Wolves. But if you don't trade me, I'm going to leave for nothing in free agency. So you can either take a small package from the Wolves or the Celtics, or I'll leave for nothing.
Now, all of this could go away depending on how the season plays out in Atlanta. Right now, the Hawks are walking a tightrope. They had a real chance to pivot from Young this summer, to retool the roster around a different identity, with young, versatile pieces like Zachary Rissicher, Dyson Daniels, and Jalen Johnson. That could have been the start of a slow, methodical rebuild, but instead, they've doubled down on winning now, loading up for next year by acquiring Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kristaps Porzingis, two players who bring very different but immediate impact skill sets. This is Atlanta saying, we still believe this core can contend. And maybe they're right. If everything clicks, if the new pieces stay healthy, if Trae finds that postseason magic we've only seen flashes of, and if the defense finally holds up against elite playoff teams. If all that happens and the Hawks make another deep run, then maybe, just maybe, Trae takes that hometown discount. Maybe he buys into the vision. But if not, if it's another early exit, another season of great individual stats, but no real threat to win at all, then the tone shifts instantly. The Hawks think they're buying themselves time, but in reality, Trae might be buying himself leverage, or even an exit plan. And the longer the extension talks drag on, the more that leverage grows. This is the kind of standoff that doesn't just fade into the background. It hovers over every game, every press conference, every cryptic tweet. And if the wrong combination of losses, injuries, and locker room tension hits, Atlanta could wake up next summer with their franchise player smiling for the cameras while holding up a jersey that doesn't say Hawks across the chest.